slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't.
Hey team, I hope you're all doing well. Today's topic is basically a question I was asked, and that was how I ran a 2:19 marathon. Okay, I don't know how my story can personally help any of you, but I hope that at least hearing some of the things that I was doing, some of the mistakes I was making, some adjustments that I made over the years to run that time will help some of you. Will help all of you that have either already run a marathon, that are maybe trying to run under 2:20 for the marathon. I hope it's a assistance to you. I will say that breaking 2:20 was like making the Olympic team for me. Okay, you know, I did have a level of talent. Okay, looking back, you know, I say a lot of times I didn't really have a lot of talent, but I did have some talent because to run that type of time took me basically from 1992 to 2007, okay? And that was from when I first started running in 1992. I include that, all of those years of training, you know, to run that 2:19. For some of you who, or maybe you're brand new to this channel, I ran 2:19:35 to finish 4th place and as the top American at the 2007 California International Marathon. I was, you know, some of the splits in that race, I was 51:27 at the 10-mile mark in that race, 107:06 through the half marathon, 144:05 through the 20-mile mark at 5:11 mile pace. And I was definitely prepared to run that fast. But that being said, everybody likes to talk about their personal best. But prior to running 2:19, I ran my debut marathon in 2002 at the New York City Marathon, running 2:43:36. I was a part of an Armed Forces lung cancer research team. We were basically put up in the Plaza Hotel in downtown New York City for a week. We weren't allowed to. The plan was we were to start in last place, 32,189th place, and for every runner we passed, Chase Manhattan Bank was donating $1 to lung cancer research. So I ended up finishing as the team's top finisher in 257th place from 32,189th. So it was definitely interesting to pass, but to, you know, bob and weave through all those runners. If you look at the finish, the official times of the 2002 New York City Marathon, look me up. It'll be 2:51. You'll see, but that's including the time it took all 32,189 runners to cross the start line. But my official net time, when I crossed the start line to when I crossed the finish line, was 2:43:36. So it took me from 2002 to 2007 to 5 more years to improve from 2:43:36 to 2:19:35. Some of the biggest changes I made was, obviously, and I've said this in other videos, was running faster during my long runs. But again, I had a lot of ups and downs throughout that training period. The mistake I was making that took me so many years to not improve drastically in the marathon distance was running long, slow, and easy long runs, every long run. Okay, if you're trying to run, at least for me, what I was trying to do was to break 2 hours and 22 minutes. I did have a very strong aerobic fitness leading into that 2:19:35, but I didn't quite have the ability to sustain the goal pace that I was aiming for, which was 2 hours and 22 minutes flat. Back then, it was the 2008 USA Track and Field Olympic Trials B standard time. And so that was the minimum time you needed to qualify for the Olympic trials. I ended up running the 2:19:35 and breaking the USA Track and Field Olympic Trials A standard time, which was 2 hours and 20 minutes flat or faster. But I did it 28 days after the Olympic trials were held. Okay. There were, you know, in terms of my build-up going into that, I did make a small improvement. I was conditionally accepted into the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program in February of 2007 and ran a personal best of 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 2 seconds at the 2007 Grandma's Marathon several months before running 219. In that race, I went out in 1:10:31 through the half marathon, which at that time was my PR for the half marathon. So again, I was running way too fast. But again, I was trying to break 222. You have to go out that quick if you're trying to run a time that fast. Or run around 112, 113 through the first half and negative split, come back maybe in a 108, 110. Heck, even that'll barely get you under 222. So you have, I ran very fast, way too aggressive, filled a 228 marathon pace through the 20-mile mark at the Grandma's Marathon, ran 153 through the 20-mile mark, and then basically walked and jogged the last 10K to run 240.02. So with the marathon distance, if you're not smart, if you're not smart in terms of your strategy of running faster, running more of your mileage at faster paces, if you're running too aerobic for too much of your weekly volume, it's going to be very hard to run an extremely fast marathon. Of course, you can still run a marathon on just volume, and there are a lot of runners that do very well on just spending. They're very consistent with their mileage, and they're very strong endurance-wise. But if you're running too much of your weekly volume too aerobically, you're not preparing yourself to race a marathon. Okay, you still need speed, you still need stamina in the marathon. So if you're doing all of your mileage at aerobic effort, you're going to be very strong in the marathon distance, but it's going to be very hard to sustain a very fast pace for over 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers. So yes, that was a small improvement. I had shown that I was able to run at least a sub 222 marathon. I'd run 51:53 for 10 miles prior to getting accepted into the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program. But I had not mastered the marathon distance. Again, I came to that program as a conditional athlete. They basically said, we're going to give a few soldiers an opportunity to train full-time, see what they can do. They've shown some promise, and in my case, I made two World Armed Forces cross-country teams, qualified for those, and again ran 51:53 at the 2004 Army 10-miler leading into that. But again, I had run 2:43:36 for the marathon, not nearly fast enough to be a part of that program. So basically, I was given the opportunity. I was given Lisa Rainsberger, who's the 1985 Boston Marathon champion, formerly Lisa Larson Weidenbach, and it was great to work with her. And she was basically one of the ones that told me, hey, for you to go from 2:43:36 to 2:22, your long runs have to be faster. Okay, so in your case, maybe your PR is 3:10 and you're trying to run 2:55. You have to start thinking about running longer efforts at a faster pace. That was one of the biggest reasons that I was able to eventually run 219 for the marathon. It was not an easy process. I had many struggles along the way. Was basically diagnosed with borderline anemia in 2007 as well. I always tell runners, if you're feeling chronically fatigued, have your ferritin levels checked. Okay, the way you do that is through a blood test. Obviously, always consult with a physician first, but I was tested and found that my ferritin level was at 21 nanograms. That is very low. Okay, it should be between 30 to 300 nanograms. Okay, if you're below 30, your body's ability to transport oxygen is not even remotely close to being at optimal levels. And what I did was I started taking an iron tablet, a 65 milligram iron tablet with some orange juice a few times a week. Dr. Jovial says the best thing to do is take liquid ferrosol, which is liquid iron, 1 teaspoon of that with 8-ounce glass of orange juice with a 250 milligram tablet of vitamin C. Do that for about a month to a month and a half, and that will raise your ferritin levels. And when I got my ferritin levels up to above 70 nanograms, I started hitting new personal best. I started really feeling strong again. I wish I would have known about this when I was in high school and college. And so I always share with athletes on these videos to make sure that if you're feeling chronically fatigued, if you're wondering if, a lot of times athletes will second guess themselves. They think they're just too old, or they're not fast enough, or they don't have what it takes. A lot of times you could be running low on this. You could be running low on iron and never even know about it. So I hope that helps all of you that have never even considered that. Okay, look up glutathione. Okay, that's another thing. The body's master antioxidant. A lot of athletes know nothing about glutathione. Okay, do a Google search. I'll leave a link below, or and here on the screen so you can check that out as well. These tactics help me run a 219. Also, running my repeat 1600s on the track were always in the 440s at altitude. I definitely credit doing those types of workouts. Repeat 3,200 meter reps, usually I would do 3 reps on the track. When I got to a point where I was running all 3 under 10 flat, usually it was in the 950s, and I did that prior to running 219. Doing repeat 400s, I was routinely, prior to breaking 219, I was doing 16 to 20 400s. Again, at 6,400 feet, anywhere from around 64 to 68 seconds per rep with 60 seconds rest. So again, that's training significantly faster than 219 marathon pace. These types of workouts are what I credit to getting to a point where I could hold 519 mile pace or 318 kilometer pace for that entire distance. You always want to make sure that you're training a significant portion, usually between around 10 to 20% of your weekly training at or close to or below your anaerobic threshold. Okay, my tempo runs, I would get my tempo runs out to around 12 to 13 miles in length, and usually at my fittest, I was running those at anywhere from in the 520s to 530s per mile pace. My long runs, the fastest long run I did prior to running 219 was 156 at altitude at 6,000 feet for 20 miles. So again, well below 6-minute mile pace. Even going into looking back at the 2011 Monumental Indianapolis Marathon, 6 weeks prior to that race, I ran 150.02 for 20 miles. That was the fastest 20 miler I'd ever done in training, averaging 5:30 for 20 miles. So you do want to, another thing that helped me run 219 was just being patient with the buildup. Okay, I would always start my tempo runs around 3 to 4 miles, usually in the low 6s to high 550s per mile pace, and then I would gradually extend that pace and get slightly faster, running in the 530s to 540s out for around 20 miles, okay, during my long runs. So those were also big reasons why I was able to hold under 520 mile pace for 26.2 miles. But again, this is we always talk about our fastest times and how it felt and things like that. I'll say that going into the 2007 California International Marathon, I was highly confident that I could get it right on that day. I did do a 10-day taper. I did know that the majority of the runners in that race, the elite runners, had times that were significantly faster. Again, I went into the 2007 California International Marathon with a PR of 2:40.02. Okay, I had run 1:07.06 for the half marathon a few months prior, September of 2007, going into that December race. So I knew running 1:07.06, definitely I had the capacity to break 2 hours and 22 minutes. So I share this with all of you because you have to look at your past performances. They will give you a general idea of how fit you are. And sometimes you just have to be extremely confident in your overall fitness, your overall preparation. At the 2007 California International Marathon, I went out the first half of that race in 1:07.09. That was 3 seconds slower than my personal best for the half marathon, which is again 1:07.06. I had no idea what pace we were on because I wasn't wearing a watch in that race. I had no idea what pace I was holding in the race. All I knew is I was running with a large group of Kenyans. There were probably about 7 or 8 Kenyans in the race in the early portion of the race. That fell down to 2 Kenyans, John Kathoga and Laban Moibin, Laban ended up winning in 2:14.30s. John ended up running 2:14.50s, I think 2:14.57 for second. There was a Russian that was still with us at 20 miles who had a PR of 2:12. He ended up finishing in 5th behind me in 2:23. And then there was a Canadian guy, Charles Bedley, who ran 2:16, who was still with me at the 20-mile mark. I lost contact with John, LeBon, and Charles just past 21 miles. We passed the 20-mile mark at 1:44.05, and in my head I'm calculating that. I'm like, well, that means we hit the 10-mile mark at 51:27. So we hit the second 10 miles in the 52:40s or 52:50s. So I knew we were on pace for a great time. I knew I was on pace. If I could just hold it together for that last 10K, I was going to crush 2 hours and 22 minutes. So again, there were disappointments throughout that time. So I want you all to know that, you know, if those that you're asking, you know, how did I run 2:19? How did I go from 2:43 to 2:19? It was several years of consistent work, training well below 5-minute mile pace, training well below 3-minute kilometer pace. Okay. So when you're trying to run fast in this distance, you have to make sure that you're spending time training at paces that are much, much faster than you envision running in the marathon distance, so that you get your goal marathon pace to feel easier and you can hold that pace. You can sustain that pace throughout the entire distance and not just a portion. You can go out at a significantly faster pace and still, for the most part, hold it together in that second half. I ran a huge positive split in that race. I went out in 107.09. I came back with 112.26. I don't know if I would have went out in 112.26 if I would have been able to come back in a 107.09. You just got to know and be confident in your training. Know that you're doing everything right. And in that particular case, I did everything properly leading into that race. I did a 10-day taper. I did a few preparatory races leading into that race. Even when I ran 107.06 in September, a few months prior to running that 2:19, I hit the 10-mile mark in that race in 50:54, which was a PR for me. So I knew running 50:54 for 10 miles, 107.06, even though for the half marathon, even though my PR going into the California International Marathon was a 2:40.02, I knew it was just a matter of time before I absolutely destroyed 2:40.02. Even when I ran 2:40 at Grandma's, again, I went out in 1:10 through the first half and came back the second half in a 1:30. Slowed at 2:28 marathon pace through the 20-mile mark at Grandma's, and then basically walked and jogged the last 10K. So that 2:40.02, I knew wasn't really, you know, showing what I was really capable of, because I lost so much time in the second half, or in the second 10 kilometers. So that's my story with how I ran 2:19. I spent many years in high school trying to run fast, you know, in college trying to get faster, and I gradually over time did get faster from the 1600 meter all the way up to the half marathon. And so I knew I was ready. So that's my story. I hope it's helpful for all of you. Just hearing my background, some of the things I was doing, some of the mistakes I was making, and I hope that you now can change and tweak some things that you're doing in training to help you succeed in your journey. Feel free to leave me a comment below. Let me know in the comment section, what is your current best for the marathon? What has been giving you the biggest problems in the marathon distance, and what are some changes that you've made, maybe that you've changed in the past, that have helped you set a new PR? I would love to hear that from you. So thank you so much for hearing me out. I hope this video is helpful for all of you, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.